Hey guys, tonight we're heading into the clouds. Not the fluffy weather app kind, but the myth-soaked mist above Olympus, where fate itself is stitched one shimmering thread at a time. You find yourself high above the mortal world, standing before a loom, so vast it creaks like the bones of the earth. The wind up here smells like linen and lightning, and every time a thread shifts, it echoes with something deeper than sound, like the sigh of a soul not yet born. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. And if you're tuning in from somewhere around the globe, let us know your city and local time in the comments. Now dim the lights and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You blink, and there they are, the Moirai, the three sisters of fate. Clotho, youngest and endlessly focused, is spinning a new thread, her fingers moving like moonlight over still water. Lachesis stands beside her, measuring the thread's length with an ivory rod worn smooth by centuries. And Atropos, oldest, most feared, waits silently with her shears, the final arbiter of when a life ends. But something's different tonight. You notice it in the hesitation. Clotho spins, yes, but slower than usual. The thread glints, not silver like most, but burnished gold, threaded with glimmers of red like embers that refuse to die. Lachesis doesn't measure, and Atropos isn't watching. Her shears rest on her lap, unopened, and her gaze is fixed far off where stars fall upward into the clouds like reverse rain. This thread isn't like the others. Most threads hum softly with the energy of coming life. They're made of longing tears, laughter toothaches, dances spilled wine, and missed chances. But this one vibrates. It's already defiant. You shift closer, and Clotho pauses, her eyes oddly human for someone older than time meet yours. We shouldn't be spinning this, she mutters. But we are. You ask what she means, and she shrugs. Sometimes the thread calls itself. A cold breeze rattles the bones of the loom, and far below in the mortal world a child cries out, newborn, angry, hungry for air. The golden thread flares. That's when you realize this thread doesn't follow the pattern. Historically, the Moirai never interfere. The loom runs like a cosmic factory, impartial and pitiless. Even Zeus, ruler of gods, bows to their decisions. Yet tonight, these ancient sisters of destiny seem uncertain. It's a rare moment. Some scholars debate whether the Moirai ever truly wavered. One fringe theory found scribbled in the margins of an unearthed Pythagorean scroll suggests the sisters once took a 10-minute break during the Bronze Age and accidentally invented sleep. But here now, this hesitation is real. Clotho's fingers tremble. Lachesis hasn't measured a single span. And Atropos, she still hasn't moved. You notice something else. The other threads, the billions that stretch in woven rivers down from the loom to the world, begin to stir. They ripple in their channels like threads caught in a breeze, vibrating faintly as if reacting to this new presence. A subtle alarm through the weave, because this thread, it might not belong. You reach out and your fingers brush the edges of the tapestry. It's warm, alive. You see flickers of memories that haven't happened yet. Feasts, betrayals, someone laughing on a rooftop, someone else burying a secret in the sand. Then just for a moment the thread sings, not in words, more like a pulse music made of choices not yet made. The loom groans. Atropos finally speaks. Are we letting this one live? Clotho tightens her grip. And Lachesis sighs like a woman who's held her breath for too many centuries. The air changes, it thickens. You realize what's about to happen isn't usual or safe. It's a tear in routine, a divine shrug, a cosmic "what if" whispered into eternity. And far, far below, the golden thread continues to unspool. You follow the golden thread as it tumbles downward through layers of cloud and starlight, drifting lazily at first, then faster drawn as if by gravity or purpose. Below, the mortal world stirs. The thread lands in a cramped firelit chamber, thick with the smell of blood and juniper smoke. A midwife wipes her brow with the back of her hand and yells something in ancient Doric Greek. A woman screams not just in pain, but in some primal, soul-deep way that shatters the air. She is bringing someone into the world, someone who is not supposed to arrive this loudly. You blink, and it's as if you're standing at the foot of her bed, invisible, watching the thread coil between the newborn's tiny fingers. It glows faintly, but undeniably. The baby is squalling like a miniature war god. His fists are balled, his face scrunched, and his cry holds the same pitch as iron on iron. The midwife freezes. She's seen something. Not the thread itself, mortals can't perceive them directly, but she sees the shimmer, the flicker in the candlelight. A gut feeling kind of omen, and she mutters a word you don't expect chosen. Historians still argue whether ancient Greek midwives had any system of superstition about fate markings on infants. Some scholars think it's retrofitted mythos, others point to burial records that suggest infants born under certain omens were given names referencing stars or shadows. The baby is cleaned and wrapped in a rough wool cloth dyed with crushed berries. The mother, young maybe 17, presses the baby to her chest. Her eyes are wide and distant, like someone who's just glimpsed something she wasn't meant to see. She names him Theron, which means hunter. The name catches in the air like a drumbeat. You glance up. The golden thread responds. It glows warmer, its tone shifting now, vibrating like a plucked harp string. And up in the clouds, Clotho nods, her lips pursed. Theron is alive. But the thread does something else. Instead of stretching forward like all the others, it twists, bends back, then snakes sideways. A strange motion like a question forming before the answer. Most threads go forward in their simple little arcs, birth, life, death. A few get knotted, particularly around teenage years, but this one already loops. Atropos notices. She picks up her shears, not to cut but to study. The blades flash in the moonlight, catching the thread's reflection. She frowns, not fear, not yet, but confusion, maybe even respect. You look back at Theron. The baby has quieted now. His eyes are open, unblinking, as if he sees far more than he should. He stares directly at the ceiling, or maybe beyond it, toward Olympus, toward the ones who spin. Most infants are all instinct and need, but Theron seems to listen. In the coming days, he'll start to do other things early. Walk too soon. Speak in sentences by 1 year. Laugh at things no one else hears. A fringe story from a wandering bard will claim Theron once stared down a wild boar in his village square and made it turn tail. You might think this sounds familiar. Prophetic, child-glowing destiny, rebellious gods, classic mythology checklist. But this one's different. Because from the moment he's born, his thread resists. Clotho pulls the golden strand gently from the spindle, and it hums in protest. Lachesis begins to measure, but the span changes with each pass. One moment it's long enough to outlive kings. The next, it contracts as if it might snap tomorrow. It's like trying to measure wind, and then a strange thing happens. You hear another thread shift, just for a second, a faint echo, Another life tugging, trying to intertwine. It's impossible. Threads shouldn't react like this, not at this stage. But this one, this child has gravity. You lean in again, closer to the loom, to the spinning sisters, to the growing confusion stitched in their quiet glances. Clotho finally murmurs, "It's not just him." Atropos sighs, placing her shears down again. And Lachesis, she whispers something that makes the clouds grow still. One of the dead has returned. And with that, the golden thread shivers. The loom creaks louder now, its wood older than time carved from a tree that no longer exists, groans like it remembers. Threads whisper against one another. You can almost hear them breathe. And at the center, Clotho's spinning wheel slows to a near halt. She leans back on her stool, cracking her fingers. A rare gesture. Clotho never stops spinning, never has, in all recorded myth. But here she is, staring at the golden thread like it just insulted her. You follow her gaze. The thread is misbehaving. It's begun to braid itself. At first its subtle, two faint strands twisting inward from either side almost playfully. But as you watch, the golden thread thickens with these new fibers shimmering with strange colors, a flicker of violet here, a green gleam there. It's absorbing something. Or someone. Lachesis blinks her measuring rod forgotten in her lap. He's not alone, she says. Atropos stands. Now that's a problem. When Atropos stands, lives end. Empires collapse. Sometimes, ironically, threads shorten themselves, trying to avoid what comes next. But not this thread. It gleams defiantly, almost smugly, refusing to bow, curl, or fade. Atropos's hand hovers over her shears, and for the first time you notice she's hesitating, not out of mercy, out of... what doubt, curiosity. Clotho clears her throat, shaking her head. Do you feel it? And you do. A current, faint but electric, like standing beneath a thunderstorm before the first drop hits. It isn't wind, it isn't magic, it's decision. You look back down into the mortal realm. Theron, now a toddler, is wandering a grove of olive trees behind his mother's home, alone, barefoot, and singing to a fig tree like it's a person. The melody, you recognize it. It's old, too old, something that hasn't been sung since the Mycenaean collapse. A fringe historian once suggested that memory can pass not just through blood, but thread, that some souls carry echoes, songs, fears, even lovers from previous lives. Mainstream academia laughed, but standing here with a thread still humming that ancient melody, you wonder. Theron pauses. He crouches beside a root and digs his little hands into the dirt. Moments later, he pulls something free. A coin, bronze, worn flat with age. Its edge bears the faint image of a Gorgon's head. His mother finds him minutes later. When she asks where he got it, he only shrugs and says, "It was waiting." The next morning, a stranger arrives in the village, a traveling potter, eyes sunburned and hands calloused. He watches Theron from a distance, then tells the village elder a story about a boy whose fate glows like the morning star. A boy who should not be touched by fate at all. Clotho, still watching, speaks without looking up. "I've felt this before." Lachesis raises an eyebrow. "When long ago? Remember the thread that curled away from the Trojan War? The one that ran under the walls and through the tunnels?" Lachesis frowns. "The coward." "No," Clotho says softly. "The survivor." Historians still debate whether certain characters in myth, those who disappear instead of die, were actually removed by the Moirai. Some say Odysseus's mother was given a second thread. Others claim the thread of Iphigenia split in two, one cut one, rerouted to Artemis's temple. The sisters sit in uneasy silence, because this child Theron is not the problem. It's the second presence, the phantom thread braided into his. Atropos finally speaks.
I don't know whose life this is anymore. Clotho bites her lip. Then maybe we don't cut it. A gasp escapes Lachesis. Clotho shrugs. Just not yet. You meanwhile inch closer to the golden thread. There's warmth now radiating from it. You swear you can smell thyme and the distant salt of an Aegean harbour, but deeper still another scent parchment oil and myrrh. You touch the braid, and for a moment, just a flicker, you see another boy. Not Theron. He's older, thinner, laughing in a language you don't recognize, holding the same coin, standing in fire. You blink, gone. The golden thread twists again, and this time the spindle stutters. The spindle stutters, a sound like bones shifting in a catacomb. Clotho curses under her breath, not dramatically, but like someone who just spilled tea on a centuries-old scroll. She tightens the golden thread's tension and spins it twice more slowly.
You watch it curl sullenly now, like a cat pretending it meant to fall off the shelf. Lachesis leans in. There's a snag, she mutters, and sure enough, the golden thread is bulging. A knot barely the size of a fingernail pulses faintly near the middle. Not unusual in mortal threads, everyone makes a mess somewhere, but this knot is moving. Threads don't do that. You lean closer, curious. The knot tightens, then loosens, tightens again as if it's breathing, and then crack. The spindle jerks. Below in the mortal world, Theron collapses. He's 7 now, running through a market in the shadow of an acropolis, one of the lesser-known ones, not Athens. Somewhere historians can't quite agree on. He's holding a handful of figs he didn't pay for, giggling like a tiny Dionysus when he stops. Mid-step. His knees buckle. He drops. No blood, no seizure, just down. The figs roll into the dust. People scream. His mother rushes to him, but Theron's eyes are wide open.
He's not crying, he's not moving, and he whispers the name of Andros. No one knows who that is. His mother does what any mother would call for priests, healers, even a satyr passing through town who claims to read soul rhythms. Nothing helps. He's fine, they say. No injury, no fever, but he's quiet for 3 days. Doesn't speak, doesn't eat, just stares into nothing and hums that same old song under his breath. Meanwhile, Clotho is staring at the knot. Atropos mutters, "Cut it." But Clotho doesn't move. "It's not a flaw," she says. "It's someone trying to get in." From the other side, Lachesis asks. Clotho shrugs. "Maybe." Historians still argue whether the Moirai ever had to fight against threads against souls or fates that pushed their way back into the weave. There's no surviving primary source that confirms this. But a few burned Orphic hymns mention echoes who swim backward through destiny. Fringe stuff, but right now, that's what this feels like.
Theron's golden thread is still attached, still warm, still his. But someone else is climbing it. You reach forward, carefully, and touch the knot. Instantly, you're pulled in. A flash of salt spray, a voice laughing in Phoenician, a spear clattering on marble. You see a man tall, limping slightly, kneeling beside a fallen comrade, and whispering the words, "Tell them I chose this." Then darkness again. You're back at the loom, breathless. The knot pulses once, then settles. Lachesis stands smoothing her robes. We've seen this before. When Atropos growls, right before the fall of Troy, Lachesis says, "There were dozens of threads doubled, tripled, tangled into each other. One of them refused to die, slipped into another. Which one? She pauses. Achilles' cousin, the boy with the reed flute. Atropos rolls her eyes. We burned that thread. Then who's this Clotho? Whispers. You all stare at the knot. Down below, Theron stirs. He sits up, quietly. Looks at his mother confused as if she's new. Then he says, I remember the lion. She freezes. He's never seen one. Theron begins to speak in ways he shouldn't. Mentions islands that no longer exist, and wines poured for gods whose temples now lie underwater. His memories don't line up, not even across this lifetime. By 10, he's drawing diagrams in the dirt that resemble ancient siege equipment. At 12, he claims the stars are whispering again, and that someone named Avandros told him not to trust the river. Clotho's face hardens. This isn't a reincarnation, it's possession. Atropos snaps. But Lachesis hesitates, or it's grief, she says softly. A soul refusing to be forgotten. The thread hums again. You lean closer. The knot has unraveled, but now the thread splits for a heartbeat. Two shimmering strands side by side, flickering in and out of alignment. And then they merge. Cleanly, no seam. Clotho steps back. Atropos drops her shears. And in the mortal world, Theron looks up at the stars and smiles for the first time in months. Theron stands at the edge of a cliff now 13 years old, all elbows, and silent, staring down into a sea that doesn't know his name. The wind combs through his hair like a parent he never met. He doesn't flinch as the gulls scream or as sharp rocks scrape his sandals. He's listening again. And somewhere above him in the weave of eternity, the golden thread gleams faintly under Clotho's hand. She's not spinning it anymore, not because it's finished, but because it's spinning itself. It winds and unwinds with a rhythm no sister controls, as if the thread has discovered a will. Or worse, a memory. Lachesis doesn't measure it anymore either. She simply watches like someone reading a scroll in a forgotten dialect, trying not to admit she understands. Atropos. She's sulking. Not dramatically, of course, just a casual, dagger-polishing sort of mood. Every few minutes she taps her shears against a stone slab and mutters, "It's unnatural." Below, Theron turns his gaze inland. The village is quiet today. That's rare. Normally it thrums with the warm chaos of goats' gossip and olive trades. But this morning a group of strangers arrived, soldiers, maybe though they wear no insignias. You watch from above as one of them kneels beside Theron's mother and gently asks, "Where is the boy who dreams of other centuries?" She tells them nothing. Of course she does. She's a mother. But you see the fear flash in her eyes because she's heard Theron talk in languages no one taught him. She's seen him touch rusted bronze tools and name them with words older than the village dialect, and now the soldiers have too. Historians still argue whether such state disappearances existed in early Hellenic territories. Some point to temple records that mention gifted youths taken by gods. Others say it was just disease or war. Fringe researchers whisper about unwound threads' lives that were erased because they pulled on something too deep. Theron doesn't run. When the soldiers approach, he meets them calmly. He says, "I know why you've come." One of them laughs. "Do you?" "Yes," Theron replies. Because he didn't finish, the soldier pauses, who Theron touches his chest. Evandros, the one who made the mistake, the one who chose too early. The wind stills. Above, Clotho blinks. Lachesis whispers. He remembers the name. And Atropos, of course, says what you're thinking. That's not possible, but it is. Because as the golden thread continues to glow, something extraordinary happens. Another thread appears, not attached, not growing, just hovering, faint, almost erased, a ghost of a life. You've seen threads end. They fray, turn brittle, dissolve into the weave. This one didn't dissolve, it just left. Clotho, trembling, now reaches for it, and her fingers pass through.
"What is that?" Lachesis asks. "A choice," Clotho says quietly. "One that was made but never accepted." Atropos growls. "This is what happens when we delay. One thread becomes two, one soul becomes many." But Lachesis holds up a hand. "Wait." She watches the ghost thread as it flickers. You look closer and see flashes inside it. Moments. A man turning away from a battle, a temple untouched by fire, a pair of sandals left at a crossroads, a song half sung beneath a cypress tree. This thread belonged to someone who refused to follow through, and it wrapped itself around Theron. You feel a chill. Back on the cliff, Theron speaks again. "I remember the fire," he says. "I remember walking away. The soldiers freeze. I was supposed to protect them." He adds, quieter now, "and I didn't." Then he turns and walks not toward the village, but toward the ruins up the hill. Ruins that have always been there, but which no one has entered in generations.
He walks as if he knows them, as if they're his. Clotho, Lachesis, and Atropos watch in silence. They don't speak as Theron descends the marble steps of an ancient temple and places the Gorgon coin at the center of the floor. And when the ground begins to glow, no one is surprised. Least of all, Theron. He whispers, "This time I won't leave." You glance back at the loom. The ghost thread begins to stitch itself into the golden one, and this time it stays. You don't see the light at first. You feel it. A warmth, gentle but undeniable, radiates from the center of the loom. The golden thread flares with a new texture like sunlit honey poured over marble. But it's no longer alone. Woven into it now is the faded thread Evandros, the ghost life, the thread that refused to die. They are one. No seam, no fray, no resistance. And yet you sense tension in the air, like two voices trying to harmonize, but one keeps slipping into a different key. Theron kneels inside the ruin. The floor beneath him is cracked, but the outlines of old mosaics still shine through the remnants of a temple no one remembers building. Scholars call it a false ruin, a structure with no matching myth, no patron deity. Some claim it was built for a forgotten god. Others say it's older than Olympus. Theron doesn't care. He places the Gorgon coin at the center of a spiral etched in the floor. The moment it touches stone, the air changes. The dust rises upward instead of falling. Light seeps from the cracks like wine from broken amphorae. And in that moment he speaks not as Theron, not as Evandros, but as both. "I failed once," he says, "but not again." At the loom, Lachesis leans forward. It's stabilizing. Clotho nods, or pretending to. Atropos crosses her arms. "You're going to tell me this is destiny now, aren't you?" But no one answers, because no one knows. Historians still argue whether fate is linear or layered. Do threads unravel, or do they loop? Some say there's a third path, a spiral fate, like the Fibonacci sequence, where events return but are never quite the same. Fringe theorists even claim a soul can echo forward, bleeding into other lives like ink through parchment. Right now, that theory doesn't feel so fringe. The temple vibrates. Theron is no longer kneeling. He's standing at the center of a circle that wasn't there moments before. Around him, ghostly flames rise, pale and silent, like memories with teeth. You see glimpses in the fire, a shield falling from a boy's hand, a gate left unbarred, a city swallowed by silence, and a man walking away face wet, never looking back. Theron watches it all, doesn't flinch. His voice is low but steady. I wasn't brave. He reaches down, grips the Gorgon coin and presses it to his chest. I want to be. At that, the ghost flames vanish, and so does the coin. You blink, gone, absorbed, as if it was never meant to be held, only returned. Up at the loom, the newly unified thread pulses with clarity. No more ghost flickers, no more knots, but something else emerges, a fork. Right where the two threads merged, they now branch again, two faint paths not quite formed, reaching outward like options not yet decided. Clotho stares. I didn't spin that, she whispers. Lachesis doesn't answer. Her measuring rod trembles slightly. Even Atropos lowers her shears. You all lean in. The forked paths shimmer with a glow that's harder to define, like the difference between truth and story. One path hums with resolve, duty, the steady beat of someone choosing sacrifice and knowing it might end in silence. The other, it pulses with possibility, change, a life not ruled by what was, but by what might be. Atropos breaks the silence. Well, which do we cut? Clotho doesn't move. Lachesis whispers, neither, not yet. Atropos scowls, but she doesn't argue. Instead, the loom slows, not stops, just softens. And somewhere below, Theron exits the ruin. He walks into the wind like someone who knows it personally. The villagers step aside without knowing why, and as he disappears down the road towards cities he's never seen, and people who've been dreaming of him, you see a faint smile cross his face. Not relief, not pride, something quieter. Redemption. At the loom, silence lingers. Clotho is still. Her hand hovers above the thread as if afraid touching it might unravel something far older than destiny. Lachesis squints her measuring rod, forgotten in her lap. And Atropos, well, Atropos is sharpening her shears with a slow circular motion, which might be her way of coping. Because none of them know what comes next. That never happens. You look down at Theron again. He's walking along a road carved into the hills of Arcadia, barefoot sun on his shoulders, the breeze at his back like a loyal dog. He doesn't carry a weapon or a map, just a small pouch at his hip containing flint-dried olives and an ancient coin that shouldn't exist anymore. Except it doesn't. The coin vanished in the temple, remember, and yet here it is again, glinting through the leather, as if refusing to be left behind. The rules are fraying. Theron stops in a clearing. He kneels beside a spring and cups the water in both hands. As it touches his lips, he flinches. A name echoes across the surface. Cyrilla. It doesn't belong to anyone he knows, and yet he knows it. The image flashes a girl with braids the color of wet sand holding a book that smells of beeswax and prophecy. A memory that doesn't feel like his, but also does. You glance at the loom. The golden thread ripples again, and for the first time since its strange braid was formed, a second thread reaches out. It's not touching, not yet, but it pulses nearby, close enough to cast a shadow. Clotho stiffens. She's coming. Atropos Lachesis asks. Clotho shakes her head. The one he forgot. Historians still argue about the phenomenon of thread twins, two lives born apart, but tied through shared dreams or synchronous decisions. Some say it's just pattern coincidence. Others cite rare papyrus scrolls that tell of lovers reincarnated again and again, only to miss each other by heartbeats. You're beginning to think the Moirai kept those scrolls on purpose. Back on Earth, Theron rises. The moment he does, a shadow crosses the clearing, a girl maybe 15 wearing a faded chiton and carrying a satchel filled with herbs and something wrapped in wool. She steps toward the spring, not noticing him at first. Then she pauses, looks up. Their eyes lock. You feel it before either of them speaks, that eerie hush in the air, like the earth itself is bracing. They don't smile, they just know the moment holds. Then she breaks it. "I thought I'd find you here," she says. Theron furrows his brow.
"Do I know you?" she shrugs. "Not yet." Above, Lachesis exhales sharply. She remembers him, how Atropos demands. She's been waking up early, Clotho murmurs, since she was 7, walking in her sleep, writing in languages she doesn't speak. "You're making this up." Clotho gestures to the thread. The second one glows faintly, now bronze, with a thread of green like leaves after rainfall. It pulses beside Theron's, not tangled, but in rhythm, like two notes in a melody, finally being played together. Back on Earth, the girl, Cyrilla, reaches into her satchel and pulls out the wool-wrapped bundle. It's a scroll. Old, wrapped in red thread. Theron's fingers twitch. He's seen that thread before in dreams that ended in fire. Cyrilla kneels, unwinds the thread and opens the scroll. Inside is a single sentence, written in script so old it predates the Greek alphabet. Theron reads it aloud. This time, do not turn away. Clotho grips the loom. The thread sings.
Not literally, but that's the only word for it. A low harmonic tone that spreads through the loom, vibrating across the pattern. Other threads perk up. Distant lives pause mid-laugh, mid-battle, mid-prayer, feeling a ripple they'll never understand. Because something has returned, something that wasn't meant to survive the last fall. A choice. Theron looks up. "Why me?" Cyrilla tilts her head. "Because you're the only one who still carries the coin?" He reaches for it again, and this time it's gone, not in the pouch, not in his hand. She smiles gently. "It's with me now." Atropos growls. They're crossing. Lachesis nods, and Clotho, she doesn't speak, because the golden thread is no longer alone. It's chosen a partner, and the weave is only just beginning. The golden thread glows brighter than ever, now twined loosely beside Cyrilla's, dancing just close enough to hint at union. Not yet touching, but orbiting each other in an unmistakable gravitational pull. You can almost hear the anticipation humming across the loom. Clotho's fingers twitch, eager to spin. Lachesis's measuring rod hovers just above the weave, and even Atropos, scowling as always, stares with something that looks suspiciously like interest. Down below, in the shade of the olive trees, Theron and Cyrilla sit cross-legged with the scroll between them. The scroll is brittle with age, but the ink is fresh. Impossibly fresh. Theron runs a fingertip along the line. This time, do not turn away. It's written in an old, almost forgotten dialect, Linear B, or something adjacent. Scholars still argue whether the language died out entirely or evolved into underground ceremonial texts used in mystery cults. One fringe theory claims some of it survived in encoded funeral chants performed by women in Thessaly. The Moirai, as it turns out, know exactly how much of that is true. But they're not telling. "Who wrote this?" Theron asks. Cyrilla shrugs. "You did? Or someone who used to be you?" He stares at her. "What does that mean?" She's quiet for a moment. "Then you ran once, from something that needed you, a fire, a choice, a promise, maybe all of it." The thread broke, but it didn't fade. She taps her chest. It came to me. Theron sits back uneasy. Why you? Because I never stop looking. The wind hushes, birds fall silent. Even the insects seem to listen. Theron shakes his head slowly. This is madness. Cyrilla chuckles, obviously. At the loom, Clotho can't help but smile. They're already finishing each other's doubts. Atropos scoffs. Sentiment isn't strength, but Lachesis raises an eyebrow. Sometimes it's the only thing that is. You watch as the threads pulse in rhythm. They haven't twisted together yet, but they've begun something rarer, a resonance. Theron closes the scroll and leans forward. What happens now? Cyrilla hesitates. We follow the path you abandoned.
And if we fail again, she looks him dead in the eye. Then we fail together. A long silence. Then finally he nods. Their threads shimmer. Far above the loom shifts, just slightly, but enough that thousands of other threads scattered across the pattern of time react. A woman in Babylon changes her wedding date. A shepherd in Delphi takes the long route home. A child in Ephesus decides to hide under a bed instead of opening a door. Choices ripple. And in the center, Cyrilla and Theron rise. They walk side by side through the olive grove, neither leading nor following. As they pass into the golden dusk, something shifts in the air. The temperature drops, the sky purples, and from the edge of the forest a third figure watches them. You squint. She's tall, taller than seems possible, and wrapped in linen that flickers between dusk and starlight. Her hair is a mass of dark braids threaded with tiny bronze pins.
You swear the pins move on their own like little compasses twitching toward something unseen. Cyrilla sees her first. Is that... Theron swallows. I think that's Lachesis. Back at the loom, Lachesis does not deny it. I walked ahead, she murmurs. To see what they do, you cheated. Atropos snaps. Lachesis smiles. I prepared. The figure steps into the light. But it's not Lachesis, not exactly. It's someone wearing her form, or remembering it. A priestess, a remnant, a whisper. Hard to say. Even the threads seem confused. They tremble faintly beneath her like reeds in a tidal current. She holds out a staff made of ashwood, bound with red twine. Take this, she says to Cyrilla. What is it? The woman smiles. A measure, yours to use if you dare to count what you risk. Cyrilla takes it without question. Theron reaches for her hand. They step forward together, and as they do, the two threads twist. Not fully, just the beginning. A soft spiral. Above Clotho inhales. It's happening. The threads touch. Not a braid, not yet. Just the first delicate twist like fingers grazing in a crowded room. A shared glance across centuries. Two lives beginning to remember that they once travelled as one. Above the loom holds its breath. You'd never thought wood could pause, but it does. The spindle slows, the shuttle eases. Even the background hum, the low murmur of fate as it's always spun, falls to a hush, as if the entire loom of destiny is leaning in, listening. Below, Theron and Cyrilla stand at the edge of a forest that didn't exist an hour ago. You saw that clearing before, empty, olive groves and dry stone. But now there are trees. Tall, pale-trunked trees that shimmer faintly under a violet sky. Their leaves are etched with patterns, some spiral, some arrow-shaped, and they rustle even when the wind is still. This wasn't here before, Theron whispers. Cyrilla nods. We're inside the thread now. He glances at her.
Is that even possible? You're asking that now, fair point. Historians still argue whether there are locations in the physical world where fate grows thin places where the veil between pattern and presence slips. Delphi, of course, is the favourite. But others claim there's an island in the Ionian Sea where dreams physically echo, and a cave in Thrace where one's shadow speaks first. Wherever this is, it's one of those places, or something older. They step inside the forest and you follow curious. The air smells like wild mint and scorched cedar. The soil underfoot is soft, almost springy, not earth-woven cloth. Threads crisscross in the dirt like tangled roots pulsing faintly underfoot. Theron glances down. Are these? Yes, Cyrilla says before he finishes. Lives. Every step they take moves across someone's fate. Each footfall ripples outward, sending faint echoes along the woven ground. One of the threads below flashes crimson. Theron jerks back.
Did I just kill someone? No, Cyrilla says softly. You reminded them. He blinks. Some lives, she explains, lie dormant, waiting to be reawakened by proximity, by memory, by truth. Theron mutters, this is way above my pay grade. Above, Clotho chuckles. He's adapting. Lachesis leans in, focused. Watch the weave, they're nearing the knot. Atropos stiffens. That knot, Lachesis nods. The one that slipped us in the Bronze Age. You glance at the loom. A massive snarl lies ahead in the pattern, tangled thick and ancient. Most knots resolve when the life ends, but this one didn't. It's a mess of overlapping decisions, abandoned duties and broken promises. It glows faintly green, the colour of envy, and things left unsaid. The twins are heading straight for it. On earth, the trees thin. At the centre of the forest is a clearing, and in its middle sits a table. Stone square, cracked down the middle like it once split under the weight of something terrible. Theron stops. He recognizes it. Cyrilla does too. This is where it happened, she whispers. Theron frowns. What? She lays the staff across the stone, where he chose to leave. A memory pushes forward in his chest. Not his, not completely, but strong. A boy, standing beside this table, armor on the ground, blood on his hands, a woman weeping, and a decision: walk away, let them burn, save no one. Theron stumbles. Cyrilla catches his arm. I didn't know, he says. You weren't meant to, she replies. But now you do. The golden thread above begins to tighten. The knot is pulling. You see it now, the strands aren't just twisted. They're arguing, pulling in opposite directions, resisting unity. This is the point where Evandros walked away, where his thread curled inward and refused to finish. And now it must be faced. Theron places his hand on the stone. I was afraid. Cyrilla nods. Me too. I thought it would cost too much. She smiles.
Everything worth doing does, and with that the threads twist a second time. Deeper, the knot trembles, and a low crack splits the air both above the loom and in the clearing below as something begins to loosen that hasn't moved in 1,000 years. The knot quivers once, twice, then holds. You watch it closely, expecting the next breath to bring release, but no. It's resisting, refusing. The threads have touched, circled, twisted twice now, but the knot remains tight as ever, almost smug. At the loom, Clotho leans back, lips tight. It doesn't want to open. Atropos scoffs, of course not. Regrets the worst knot of all. Lachesis watches in silence, her eyes unreadable. Down below in the clearing, Theron draws his hand back from the stone. His fingers tremble. Not with fear exactly, but with something heavier. Recognition. I left them, he whispers. I left everyone. Cyrilla doesn't speak.
Because there's nothing to say when someone sees the shape of their own failure for the first time. The clearing is still. but the trees around it lean slightly inward now, as if even they are listening. The air carries no breeze, no birdsong, only a pressure, as though the past itself is holding its breath. And then quietly, the stone table shifts, just a hair. A crack deepens across its surface, and something inside it begins to glow. Theron steps back. "What is that?" Cyrilla kneels beside it. Her hands brush the crack and her voice is soft. A memory, one that never finished forming. You blink. A memory inside the stone. But yes, you can see it now, faint figures trapped inside the slab. They shimmer in and out of view like underwater ghosts. A woman with braids shouting through smoke. A boy clutching a broken spear. A gate slammed shut. A voice screaming he was supposed to stay. Theron stares at them all. "They remember me." "No," Cyrilla says gently. "They remember the choice." And then, without warning, the ghost of Evandros appears. Not as a separate figure, but as a mirror. Theron flinches because he's staring at himself, but older, sadder, wearing the kind of expression that never quite forgives itself. The ghost speaks voice brittle. I thought leaving would make it easier. That I'd be forgotten. Theron's jaw tightens. "You weren't. I couldn't bear to watch them fall. You let them fall alone." Silence. And then the ghost fades. The stone table begins to tremble. The trees withdraw, as if no longer willing to witness what's coming next. Because now the knot is bleeding. Not with blood, don't worry, we're still firmly in PG-13 territory, but with light. Pale gold threaded with deep shadow, like sunlight filtering through storm clouds. It leaks from the crack curls through the grass and wraps around Cyrilla and Theron like a question looking for an answer. Clotho adjusts the tension on the loom. Ready Lachesis nods, as will ever be. Atropos mutters, "Get on with it." The threads begin to twist a third time, not gently now. This one is decisive, firm, as if two currents have finally chosen to merge. Consequences be damned. Theron watches the light rise. It climbs his chest, wraps his shoulders, flickers across his face, and in that moment he's not just Theron, he's Evandros. He's the choice. He's the one who stayed, and the one who ran. He reaches out and touches the stone again. "Let it finish," he says. Cyrilla steps beside him, hand on the staff, and together they push. Not physically, the stone doesn't move, but something beneath it does. A sound like threads, snapping like wind, rushing backward echoes across the clearing, and above the knot breaks, not violently, not with smoke or fire. It unwinds like a sigh. At the loom, Clotho's mouth falls open. Lachesis blinks once slowly. Even Atropos sets down her shears. Because that knot, that terrible tangled regret of 1,000 years, it's gone, unspooled into the pattern without resistance, as if all it needed all along was to be faced. The thread now runs clean. 2 lines, gold and green, wound tight, braided not by accident or chaos, but by choice. You feel it, a deep shift, not just in their story, but in the weave itself, a correction, a reconciliation, a renewal. Theron steps back from the stone. It has crumbled into dust. And in his eyes, peace, not triumph, just the soft, impossible calm of someone who finally answered a question that haunted more than one lifetime. Cyrilla touches his arm. "We're not done," she says. He nods. "I know," and somewhere above the loom begins to spin again. The loom spins, not rapidly, not recklessly, but with a rhythm that hasn't been heard in centuries. Steady, deliberate. The sound is almost soothing now, like rain against a temple roof, or the rustle of parchment in a quiet library. Clotho lets out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Lachesis smiles faintly and begins to measure again, her rod finally steady. Atropos leans forward just slightly, her shears resting idle for once. The golden-green braid hums with life, whole, intact. No more knots, no rogue splits, no whispering ghosts from lives half-lived. But it's not done. Threads don't simply resolve once a knot is untangled. They move forward, they test the new pattern, they challenge the shape of their own continuation. Below, Theron and Cyrilla walk away from the crumbled altar. There's no music, no magical light show, no divine fanfare, just dust and peace, the kind that settles deep in the joints and stays quiet, the kind that only comes after something has been faced, spoken and surrendered. They head east toward the coast. They don't know why, only that something pulls them. A wind from the sea that smells of rosemary and salt. A quiet certainty that there's more to do. They pass into a town you've never heard of, because it's not listed on any surviving scrolls. Not one. The name of the place is Eleuthera. Some claim it was swallowed by the sea during a minor quake in the 4th century BCE. Others think it was renamed, reabsorbed, forgotten. But fringe cartographers swear it existed, and they point to satellite scans revealing submerged roads off the coast of the Peloponnese. Theron and Cyrilla walk its dusty streets now. No one stops them, but everyone sees them. A merchant nods without realizing why. A child stares eyes wide. A beggar mutters something about the twinned ones who dream through fire. They find lodging in a simple clay-walled house near the cliffs. It's quiet, modest, smells like herbs and damp linen. They sleep dreamlessly, and then they wake to a visitor. A man in a grey cloak, face mostly hidden beneath a hood, sits at their table. He doesn't speak, just waits. Theron studies him. "Who are you?" The man gestures to the wall. There, faint and glowing, is a symbol, 2 threads crossing, but not touching. Cyrilla steps forward. "You're from the pattern." The man nods once. Historians have never agreed on who or what acts as the emissaries of fate in myth. There are references to dreamwalkers, pattern keepers, those who hold the ink. Some say Hermes plays this role when the gods are distracted. Others think these visitors are echoes, living threads sent back through the loom. This one says nothing, but he places a small object on the table, a spindle, just a fragment, polished wood, dark as night, with one red thread still clinging to it. Theron reaches out, but the man raises a hand, not for him, for Cyrilla. She understands immediately. "It's mine," she whispers. The man inclines his head. She lifts the spindle. It's warm in her hand, not with heat, but with memory. She sees flickers, not past lives exactly, more like adjacent ones. A girl who chose to stay behind during an evacuation. A queen who left her palace and never returned. A healer who spoke one name as she fell to an arrow. All of them versions, all of them threads uncut. Theron watches quietly, awed. "Why her?" he asks. The visitor finally speaks, voice low and ancient. "Because she remembered before you did." Then he turns to go. "Wait," Theron says. "What now?" The man pauses in the doorway. "You walk, you choose, you braid." Then he's gone. Outside, the sky has darkened, not with night, but with eclipse. A soft veil of shadow rolls over Eleuthera, as if reminding them both the world is still watching. Back at the loom, Clotho turns the wheel again. Lachesis smiles, and Atropos, well, she doesn't. Not yet. The eclipse holds. Not total darkness, but a strange twilight, soft and surreal. Shadows deepen at odd angles. colours dull as though the world has been tinted with ash and memory. Cyrilla steps into the grey light, the spindle clutched in both hands. It no longer hums, it listens. She feels it like a weight, but not in the arms. It presses gently behind her ribs like a memory trying to become muscle. Her fingers itch to spin, not with thread yet, but with choice. Theron follows slower now, thoughtful. He's changed, not in the mythic way, no glowing eyes or divine tattoos, but in the way a man changes when the voices in his mind stop screaming and start listening. Back at the loom, Clotho watches with narrowed eyes. The spindle's awake. Lachesis nods, measuring the new segment of the braid. It's starting to anchor. Atropos is already grumbling. Let me guess they're going to try something ridiculous. They are. Because Theron and Cyrilla aren't just wandering anymore, they're following a pull. It starts in the soles of their feet, threads beneath the earth responding to their presence, like veins beneath skin, like fault lines before a quake. The town of Eleuthera begins to shift, not visibly, but perceptibly. You see it in the way the baker forgets her recipe mid-knead, in how the temple pigeons refuse to roost, in the way every sundial in the village begins to lag by exactly 13 seconds. The weave is rearranging. Historians have a name for this, though they rarely use it. Seriously, thread drift. It refers to brief, unexplainable fluctuations in historical records, temples listed in one scroll, but absent from others, birth dates that shift with calendar revisions or statues that vanish from law altogether. Thread drift was once dismissed as clerical error. But you're watching it happen. Theron and Cyrilla are creating a new branch in real time. Not through power, through presence. They pass an ancient fig tree. Beneath it, a stone marker crumbles into dust. They walk across a dried-up spring, and water begins to seep up through cracks. And then, at the edge of the city, they reach a wall. Not of stone, of threads. It's visible only to them, but even you can sense it. A curtain of densely woven possibility. Each strand pulses with images of futures that might be, might have been, or may never arrive. Cyrilla raises the spindle, the threads part. Not with drama, no thunder, no divine wind, just a gentle folding back. Beyond the curtain lies a path made of woven gold and green identical to their braid. They step onto it, and immediately everything changes. They're not in Eleuthera anymore, they're between. The air here is thinner, the sky, if there is one, is a mosaic of stars and symbols shifting constantly. The ground pulses beneath their steps like a living thing. This is not a place for mortals, it's a passage. One you're not supposed to find unless you've earned it. Back at the loom, Clotho murmurs. They've entered the corridor. Lachesis's brow furrows, but it wasn't open. Atropos drops her shears. Oh no, 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 they're heading there. Clotho's eyes widened. The archive. The moment the word is spoken, the threads tense, because the archive isn't myth. It's the place where forgotten lives go, every choice never made, every name never remembered, every song interrupted, the lives that flickered and vanished before they could fully unfurl. And it's where Theron and Cyrilla are now headed. You feel it in your bones. This is more than a story now. This is a reclamation. Theron tightens his grip on Cyrilla's hand. She still holds the spindle, but it's glowing now softly like a lantern made of breath and thread. Up ahead a door appears. No frame, no hinges, just a rectangle of stillness in the weave. Etched into its surface are the words, "For those who walked away too soon." Theron raises his hand. He knocks once. The door opens. and the forgotten begin to stir. The door doesn't creak. It unfolds like a petal, opening toward the sun, revealing not a room, but a chasm of memory. No floor, no ceiling, just a space made of stories half spoken and breaths never taken. The air is thick with what might have been. Theron hesitates at the threshold. Cyrilla squeezes his hand gently. We're not alone here. And they're not. As their feet cross the doorway, the space shifts. Figures shimmer into focus, just outlines, at first silhouettes made of stardust and thread, then faces, expressions, echoes of names not spoken in centuries. Some are children frozen at the edge of choice, others are elders' eyes, bright with regret. Many are in between, caught in the tangle of almost. The forgotten. Cyrilla steps forward. They're waiting. Theron looks around. For what to be finished? Above, Clotho goes still. She hasn't spun a single thread since they passed through the veil. Her hands hover over the spindle, like she's not sure whether to help or stay out of the way. Lachesis stares at the measuring rod. It now glows with a soft gold, pulsing in rhythm with Cyrilla's steps. Atropos has stopped sharpening. Even her fingers are quiet. Because this place, the archive, isn't supposed to be entered. It's supposed to be guarded. Theron walks among the figures. Some reach for him. Others just watch. He stops before a young man whose face looks vaguely familiar. He has no mouth, just eyes wide with longing. Who is he? Theron asks. Cyrilla gently reaches out, touching the figure's shoulder. He was a decision, she says, one you never made, a friendship that faltered, a sentence you didn't say. The figure bows his head and fades into thread, unraveled gently. His form vanishes, but something else lingers. A light, small and soft, joins the braid trailing behind Theron and Cyrilla. A new colour threads into the pattern, deep amber. Clotho whispers, "They're repairing." Lachesis doesn't speak. She's watching the braid grow. Another figure appears, an old woman in priestess robes carrying a broken staff. Cyrilla gasps. That's her.
Who myself? Or a version of me who stayed behind. The woman raises her staff and Cyrilla lifts her spindle in return. There is no duel, no lightning, just a single shared nod acknowledgement. The figure dissolves her shape, flowing into Cyrilla's thread like water slipping into a river. The spindle glows again, brighter this time, more amber, more memory, more thread. You glance at the loom. It is spinning now, violently, not chaotic but hungry. It's pulling in everything the twins touch in this strange realm. The forgotten, the misremembered, the regrets, and it's braiding them in. One figure steps forward, a boy no older than 6, holding a flute carved from laurel. Theron stops, kneels. I know you, the boy nods. You were there, Theron murmurs, when I ran. The boy looks up. You played as the gates fell, Theron says. You didn't stop. The boy doesn't reply. He simply holds out the flute. Theron takes it, and as he does, the boy fades.
The flute remains, real, heavy, cool to the touch. Theron lifts it to his lips. One soft note escapes, haunting and cracked. And across the archive, everything shudders. The figures begin to move, not fade, not dissolve. They walk, toward the light, toward the braid, toward completion. You glance down and realize Theron and Cyrilla's thread isn't gold and green anymore. It's becoming something more, a spectrum of reclaimed choices. The braid is now thick enough to carry others. And the loom welcomes it, not with words, with movement. The spindle turns faster, the pattern brightens, the great tapestry shifts slightly to accommodate this new column of clarity running through its center. And deep in the archive, a final figure emerges, a woman in black. Not Atropos, but something older. Her thread was never spun, it just was. She watches the twins quietly, then whispers, "You found the thread no one dared to touch." Theron bows his head. "We remembered it." The woman nods, then steps backward into the dark. Gone. And above the loom stops spinning for just one heartbeat to mark the moment, then begins again. The archive is changing. Where once stood silence and shadows now stretches a gentle glow like dawn arriving not over mountains, but within memory. The forgotten are no longer static, no longer dust-bound silhouettes. They move, they shimmer, they release. Theron and Cyrilla walk side by side down a corridor that was never carved, never built, just remembered into being. Each step adds color to the braid trailing behind them. Amber for closure. Deep indigo for sorrow made peaceful. Pale pink for words finally spoken in the silence. Clotho, watching from the clouds, doesn't dare touch her spindle. "She's letting it grow," Lachesis whispers. "She has to," Atropos says, though without her usual sting. "They've taken the pattern out of our hands, but it's not rebellion, it's restoration." Back below the corridor narrows. Theron and Cyrilla reach a small archway etched in what looks like brass and shadow. No inscription, no symbols, just a door frame leading into a space that glows like a memory made warm. Cyrilla hesitates. "Are we ready?" she asks. Theron studies her, the spindle in her hand, the way the braid has wrapped loosely around her wrist, like a silk ribbon. "I think we already stepped through the real door," he says. And together they enter. The chamber is quiet. A single platform rises in the center. Upon it a loom, much smaller than the one above Olympus, less ornate, worn smooth by human hands. Not divine. Theron steps closer. "Is this?" Cyrilla nods. "The human loom." Historians argue whether mortals ever possessed a way to influence fate directly beyond prayer, beyond ambition. There are whispers in Orphic hymns of a loom in the mortal realm, once tended by priestesses of mnemosyne, the titaness of memory. A device used not to control fate, but to mend it, correct it, thread it gently back into wholeness. The chamber pulses. Theron reaches for the shuttle. It's light, balanced. It fits his hand like it was waiting. Cyrilla places the spindle on the edge of the loom. The braid begins to unwind just a little. Threads spill gently into the machine, gold, green, amber, indigo. The colors of choices no one else remembered. Theron threads the shuttle. But before he weaves, he stops. "We need one more thread." He looks to Cyrilla. She tilts her head. "Me, no," he says, eyes distant. "Them." And with that, he turns not toward the archive, but toward you. Yes, you. Because this story isn't just theirs, is it? You've followed every step, seen every memory, watched every regret reclaimed. You have threads too, words you didn't say, goodbyes that came too late, things you still carry. Theron reaches through the air, through the veil between story and listener, and his hand opens. You feel it. Not as pressure, but as invitation. The loom waits, and the thread that appears next, it's yours. No color at first, just light. But as it joins the others, it takes on shade, whatever yours may be. Cyrilla watches, and her smile is soft. Now we can begin. Theron weaves the first pass. The loom accepts it with a sigh. You can hear it, the same way you hear a page turn in a long-forgotten book, the same way you hear your own breath when you finally forgive yourself. Above the great loom on Olympus mirrors the movement just slightly. Clotho resumes spinning. Lachesis measures without speaking. Atropos. She folds her hands in her lap, because this isn't a thread to cut, it's one to carry forward. The tapestry shifts, not all at once, not dramatically, just enough to make space for Theron, for Cyrilla, for the forgotten, and yes, for you. The human loom hums softly, now its wooden frame alive with vibration. Every pass of the shuttle sends a wave through the fabric, not just down the warp and weft, but outward, everywhere. Theron weaves slowly. Not out of hesitation, but care. Each motion feels sacred. He's not just weaving a thread, he's integrating a life. Yours, Cyrilla's, Evandros's, and the ones who will never have names, only echoes. Beside him, Cyrilla feeds the spindle forward. The braid unwinds just enough to offer itself, never resisting, never fraying. She watches it join the pattern as if recognizing an old friend walking home. The tapestry on the loom reveals fragments, not clear pictures, more like impressions left by dreams. A girl placing stones on her windowsill to remember a brother who never returned. A poet's final verse scratched into the wall of a prison that history forgot. A mother burying a letter she never sent beneath a fig tree that still stands. These aren't myths, they're remnants. Back at the divine loom, Clotho's eyes widen. They're creating a secondary pattern. Lachesis leans in, it's not parallel, it's embedded. Atropos lifts her shears, not to cut but to reflect light. Not a new fate, she mutters, a reconciliation. The Moirai have seen a million patterns. But this is something quieter, older, a form of fate not ruled by inevitability but by return. Theron's shuttle stills. He has reached a knot, a new one, fresh. It's smaller than the last, but it pulses angrily, resisting the weave. Cyrilla narrows her eyes. It's not from us. No, Theron murmurs. It's trying to get in. You feel it too, some other presence pressing against the pattern. At first you assume it's another forgotten soul. But no, this one knows it doesn't belong. The thread is dark, too dark, not shadow, but absence. A space that unthreads whatever it touches. A thread of undoing. Cyrilla grabs the spindle. It glows brighter, as if trying to protect the weave, but the knot grows. Back at the upper loom, the Moirai stand, all three. Lachesis gasps. It's a severance thread. Atropos's mouth tightens. Those were supposed to be destroyed. Clotho whispers, one survived. In the oldest myths, ones, scrawled in lost Mycenaean glyphs, there are rumors of threads that were never meant to exist, spawned not from life, but from rejection, not death, but deletion. Severance threads, they unmake, and now one is trying to slip into Theron's pattern. He grips the shuttle harder. I can't pull through, it keeps unraveling. Cyrilla stands beside him, then we don't weave it. She raises the spindle. It pulses amber, indigo, gold. The severance thread recoils slightly, as if recognizing the strength in her pattern. But it doesn't retreat. Theron looks at her. What if it spreads? Cyrilla says nothing. Instead, she does the impossible. She invites it in. The severance thread wraps around her hand. It tries to pull apart the spindle, but it can't. Her braid is too strong, too full. She breathes deeply, closes her eyes, and begins to sing. It's not loud, just a single melody. But the thread stills, because the song, it's not one of defiance, it's one of recognition. This thread isn't evil, it's abandoned, a thread that was never chosen. And as Cyrilla sings, it begins to glow, faintly, hesitantly. Color returns slowly, a sliver of blue, a pulse of rose. It stops resisting. Theron takes a chance and pulls the shuttle forward. The severance thread reborn joins the pattern, not erased, not cut, woven. And as the loom absorbs it, the pattern becomes clearer. This was never a tale about fate defied. It was about fate healed. You glance down at your own place in the tapestry, and for a moment you see it. A thread, steady, connected, carried forward. The pattern is shifting, slowly, gently, but undeniably. It's no longer just Theron and Cyrilla's braid winding through the loom. It's become something larger.
Deeper. A new kind of thread forged not from birth or decree, but from reclamation. Clotho touches her spindle again. For the first time in ages, it spins without her guiding it. Lachesis watches the measuring rod extend beyond what she thought was possible. And Atropos. She leans forward, eyes narrowed. Tell me we're not about to lose control of the entire weave, she mutters. Clotho shakes her head. Not lose, share. Back below, Theron and Cyrilla remain at the loom. The severance thread lies still now, woven cleanly into the growing fabric. It no longer fights. Its darkness has faded to a smoky grey, threaded with light like charcoal kissed by dawn. The platform vibrates beneath their feet. They don't flinch. They've become accustomed to this rhythm, the thrum of memory, the ache of choosing to keep going. The door behind them, the one they entered through, is gone, and the chamber begins to breathe. Yes, breathe.
The walls pulse faintly as if the room itself is alive, stitched into the loom's memory. Above the platform, a new figure begins to take shape. Not a person, a shape, like a loom, but made of light and echo. Cyrilla stares up at it. What is that? Theron frowns. It's mirroring us. Historians still argue whether fate has a memory of its own if patterns once set become easier to replicate over time. Some say every hero's journey is just a rewrite of the same original act of courage. Fringe scholars speak of echo looms, places or patterns that reproduce events with slight variations to balance the tapestry. This is one of those moments. The shape above them grows clearer. You see twin braids winding upward, multiple colors, green, gold, amber, grey. They spiral upward, spinning a new loom into being, not for gods, not for myths, but for mortals. And then something unthinkable happens. The pattern opens. It ripples outward not just through the archive, but across the greater tapestry. In lands far from Eleuthera, a child in Delphi wakes and remembers a song never taught. A historian in Ephesus finds a coin that shouldn't exist, engraved with twin threads. A river in Thrace alters its course by a hair's breadth, avoiding a village that would have flooded. Minor things, quiet things, but they matter. They always have. Back in the chamber, the newly forming loom begins to hum. Not mechanically, musically. The tune matches Cyrilla's earlier song, repeating, building, harmonizing. And then it sings back. Cyrilla gasps. It remembers. Theron's eyes shine. It knows. You watch as the light loom reaches its peak, and then begins to spin without them, on its own. Clotho clasps her hands. It's alive. Lachesis's voice trembles. It's mortal fate. Atropos rises, not to cut, but to kneel. Because for the first time the goddesses of fate are no longer the only ones spinning the pattern. Mortals have joined them not in defiance, not in blasphemy, but in resonance. The chamber begins to fade. Not as erasure, but as elevation. Theron and Cyrilla step away from the old loom, their work done. The spindle returns to her hand, its thread now warm and still. The flute at Theron's side hums quietly, another echo remembered. And when the chamber disappears entirely, They find themselves not in Olympus, not in Eleuthera, but in a quiet field of lavender at sunrise. Cyrilla closes her eyes. Do you think anyone will know? Theron looks toward the horizon. They won't have to, he says. They'll feel it. Because sometimes the thread you choose not to cut becomes the one that binds the world back together. The lavender sways softly in the golden light. Theron and Cyrilla stand ankle-deep in the violet bloom, the hum of bees and the hush of morning wind brushing against their skin like memory. There's no temple here, no audience, no scroll to write their names upon. And yet, everything feels significant. The braid trails behind them, still visible, still pulsing, but thinner now, settled, not because their story is ending, but because it has found its rhythm. At the loom above, Clotho spins again deliberately now. The golden thread feeds into the tapestry, not as a wild force, but as a melody remembered and gently sung. Lachesis measures, though she no longer looks at her rod. She just knows. Atropos leans on her shears like a cane. She's earned that thread, she murmurs. Clotho nods. So did he. Below, Theron picks a sprig of lavender, turns it in his fingers, and offers it to Cyrilla. She tucks it behind her ear with a small, amused smile. Do you think it's really over? No, he says. I think we just stopped needing to fight it. They begin to walk, no destination, just motion. The field stretches on endlessly soft and open, a place beyond place, a breath between chapters. Then suddenly something catches Cyrilla's eye. A shape in the distance, small and gleaming. She kneels and brushes aside the blossoms. There, half buried in the soil, lies a ring, simple, bronze, set with a tiny oval of obsidian. She picks it up. Theron frowns. That's not yours. No, she says softly. But it was. And the moment she says it, you feel it too, because this field doesn't just hold lavender, it holds the seeds of stories, each bloom growing from a moment reclaimed, a promise kept late, a sorrow forgiven, a name remembered just in time. The whole field is grown from the archive's release. Cyrilla slips the ring onto her finger, not because she needs it, but because it's hers. Theron crouches beside her fingers, brushing the soil. There are more. And he's right. You see them now, small objects beneath the surface, hairpins, charms, bits of writing, a spindle that belonged to no one and everyone. They are the residue of reclaimed lives. Historians have a term for this phenomenon: dislocated relics, artifacts found where no historical records place them, often attributed to trade or war, but occasionally one appears in a place that never existed, a fig tree in a desert with no rain, a scroll inscribed with names not yet born, a thread buried in stone. The Moirai know where they come from, but they never say. Theron rises. So where do we go now? Cyrilla looks out across the horizon. Anywhere. And they do. They walk forward, not toward a city or a mountain or a temple, but toward the next thread waiting to be seen. And as they move, the braid behind them slowly begins to dissolve, not vanish, transform. It spreads outward, sinking into the field, seeding the land. One thread becomes many. Above, Clotho smiles as her spindle spins on its own. Lachesis steps away from the loom, and Atropos folds the shears shut. We won't need these, she says. And for the first time in eons, she places them gently on the floor of the clouds. The loom doesn't stop, but it no longer leads. It listens. It follows, because the ones below no longer require fate to direct them. They've chosen to weave with it. The lavender field fades behind them, not suddenly, not as disappearance, but as transformation. With each step, Theron and Cyrilla take the world shift subtly, as though space itself is weaving around them. A cobbled path unfurls under their feet, old, worn and familiar. Moss nestles between the stones. Birds call out above their song, strange and lovely, like flutes echoing underwater. Cyrilla stops walking. This is the road from my childhood. Theron turns, the same one I dreamed about. They exchange a look. It isn't nostalgia, it's recognition, because this place, wherever it is, isn't a memory, it's made from memory. Threaded together from the lives they reclaimed, the choices they welcomed, the fears they faced. Each stone beneath their feet is stitched from a former doubt now made real and walkable. Back at the loom, Clotho's fingers move in a new rhythm, one she didn't invent but learned. The thread now spins toward her hands, not from them. Lachesis has set down her measuring rod. Atropos remains where she is, hands empty, watching the braid move without needing to be cut. Below the road leads to a fork. Two paths stretch ahead, one veiled in morning mist, soft and slow, winding through distant forest. The other, sunlit, slope downward toward the sound of laughter and rushing water. Cyrilla eyes the first, stillness. Theron nods toward the second, change. They stand at the divide, no pressure, no looming choice, just invitation. And for once, neither hesitates. They smile, small, secretive knowing, and take both. Hand in hand, they walk between the two paths. The land opens for them, literally. A third path appears narrow, unmarked and wild, grown from their shared presence. This path was never carved by gods or fate. It wasn't predicted in any scroll, it was born from choice. Historians and the gods rarely acknowledge this third path. It's not destiny, it's not deviation, it's deliberate. As they walk it, the sky shifts, stars blink through daylight. A constellation above them rearranges itself into the shape of a spindle and braid. Cyrilla sees it first. "Is that us?" Theron laughs. "Looks like the Moirai got sentimental." She nudges him playfully. Or competitive, he nudges back. "Clotho's been watching us like a soap opera." You hear it too, the faintest chuckle from Olympus. Atropos mutters, "They're not wrong." The path twists gently through a grove of myrtle trees. Bees hover lazily in the warm air. Somewhere nearby, a flute plays a song that hasn't been written yet. Or maybe it has, just not by them. Theron pauses. The ground pulses once beneath his feet. Cyrilla tightens her grip. You felt that too, they look down. The thread is beneath them again, not above, not ahead, but within. Woven through the path, through their shadows, through the roots of every tree around them, their thread isn't guiding them anymore. It's becoming them. You realize something as you watch. They are no longer just characters on a journey. They are weavers now, not of all fate, just of their own, and perhaps in that of others. The path widens once more, not toward a city or shrine, but toward a small wooden bench beneath a fig tree in bloom. They sit, not to plan, just to be. The thread goes quiet, not stopped, simply content. Above the loom continues, steady and silent. And the Moirai, they are smiling, because the greatest act of fate is to choose. The fig tree rustles overhead, casting dappled light across the worn bench where Theron and Cyrilla now sit. They aren't speaking, not because there's nothing to say, but because the quiet between them is enough. The sun settles low, warm but not burning. Somewhere nearby, cicadas begin their soft rattling hymn. It feels like the end of something, but not the kind that aches, the kind that settles in. Cyrilla leans back, her fingers absently tracing the grooves in the wooden bench. "Do you ever wonder," she says, "what would have happened if we hadn't met Theron?" Smiles faintly. "I wonder what would have happened if we hadn't remembered." Above, the Moirai pause. Clotho stops spinning for a moment, not out of necessity, but out of reverence. Lachesis lifts her rod, not to measure, but to point. Atropos doesn't even reach for her shears. Instead, she simply says, "Watch." And so you do. A soft wind picks up swirling fig blossoms around the pair. One petal lands in Cyrilla's lap. She folds it gently between her fingers as if it's sacred. And then, as the last rays of sunlight stretch across the grove, a figure approaches, old, small, wrapped in patchwork robes. You might expect a deity or a guide, but no, just a weaver, not divine, not celestial, just human. She carries a basket of threads, none of them glowing, none magical, just cottons, linens, a few scraps dyed with herbs and earth. She stops before them. "May I sit?" she asks. Theron nods, motioning to the space beside them. She settles in with a quiet sigh and begins pulling out strands. One green, one blue, one deep red, the color of dried pomegranates. She doesn't say anything at first. "Then I saw your braid." Cyrilla watches her. "Where everywhere," the weaver says, "in songs, in choices, in people doing small kind things without being told why." She lays the red thread across her lap. This one used to be tangled, but lately it's been softer. Theron leans forward. "Whose is it?" The weaver smiles. "No one important." Then she pauses, or maybe everyone. Historians don't record moments like this, not because they aren't real, but because they are too small, too humble, too ordinary, and yet they're the threads that hold the whole pattern together. You feel it again, that hush, the kind that follows a turning point not marked by trumpets or thunder, but by stillness. The weaver looks at Cyrilla's spindle. "You're not finished," she says. Cyrilla nods. "I know, but you're no longer afraid of what's unfinished." Theron chuckles. "We used to chase fate like it was something running ahead of us, and now it walks beside us." The old weaver stands. She leaves behind one thread, undyed, simple, coiled into a spiral like a snail shell. "Take this," she says. "It's not from a god, it's from someone who forgave herself." Then she walks away, slowly, silently, back into the lavender. Theron picks up the thread. It feels gentle, not powerful, just true. Above, the Moirai say nothing. They don't need to, because something rare has happened. The story has begun to tell itself. You glance toward the tapestry and see it, the new section. Not bold or grandiose, just honest, woven with threads of humility, of repair, of people who chose not to turn away when they could have. Cyrilla turns to Theron. Ready? He stands, offering his hand. Together they leave the bench and step forward, not toward glory or legend or destiny, just forward. The braid follows quietly behind. The path that greets them now is no longer cobbled or woven or carved by unseen hands. It is dirt and dew. Wildflowers spill over its edges. The air is thick with the scent of time and quiet rain that never quite falls. Theron and Cyrilla walk hand in hand, no destination in mind. The spindle swings gently from her belt. The simple, undyed thread left by the old weaver rests in her palm like a promise not yet spoken aloud. For a moment it seems the world itself is listening to their footsteps. Above, Clotho glances sideways at her sisters. "They're not returning to the loom, are they?" Lachesis shakes her head. "They no longer need to. Atropos watches the path winding ahead of the twins. "What's left for them out there?" Life Lachesis answers. "The part we can't measure. The divine loom continues its slow, steady spin, but it does so now as an echo, not a command. The braid below pulses with its own rhythm, a quiet kind of authority, a softness that can't be forced, only followed." Theron and Cyrilla pause at a low stone wall covered in lichen. Beyond it, a field of barley sways. In the distance, someone sings. No language, just melody. The kind sung while washing clothes, or hanging lanterns, or remembering someone you haven't quite forgotten. "I know this place," Cyrilla says, blinking. "So do I," Theron replies. "But we've never been here." A rabbit watches them from the grass. The sky above is streaked with thin clouds shaped like brushstrokes. Time slows. Then something catches Cyrilla's attention, a figure up ahead. Young, familiar, running barefoot along the edge of the barley. It's her. A younger self, maybe 10, maybe 12, laughing for no reason, spinning in circles, utterly unburdened. Her hair is wild, her arms outstretched. Cyrilla gasps, and beside her another figure appears. Theron's boy self, leaner, messier, his face not yet shaped by regret. He races the girl through the grain barefoot and grinning. The older Theron and Cyrilla stand in silence. Not frozen, just struck. "Do you see them?" Cyrilla asks. Theron nods. "I remember that day." She turns to him. "But it never happened. Not before," he says, "but now it did." The Moirai remain silent, not out of confusion, but out of respect. Because this, what the twins are witnessing, is a temporal stitch, a gift not granted by gods, but by healing. Somewhere in the weave, a skipped stitch has been rewoven. A chapter never lived has softly written itself into the pattern. Theron watches his boy self collapse in the grass arms, flung wide like a hero, fallen in triumph. Cyrilla's younger reflection flops beside him, pointing toward the sky and naming clouds that don't exist. Then, without warning, they vanish. Not tragically, just gently, like a dream that knows it's time to leave. Cyrilla places the undyed thread into the grass where the children once lay. It doesn't vanish, it roots. Sprouting as they watch, the thread becomes a single pale flower, not grand, not glowing, just a simple bloom that wasn't there before. They move on. Their braid, now joined with yours and with many others, weaves quietly behind them. No one would notice it unless they were looking very closely, and most won't.
But those who do will say things like, "Something's changed lately," or "I don't know why, but I finally made the call," or "It just felt like the right time." They won't realize it, but they're walking on threads Theron and Cyrilla helped repair, and so are you. The path narrows again into a woodland trail beneath oak trees, too old to care about names. Light flickers through the canopy. A songbird starts and stops mid-tune. Theron speaks quietly. "Are we done?" Cyrilla smiles. "No," she says. "We're just starting." The oaks arch overhead like cathedral vaults, their ancient limbs stitched with moss and wind. Leaves flicker gold and green, casting dappled light over the trail ahead. And the forest hums, not with magic, but with patience. Cyrilla walks a few paces ahead, now her spindle tucked against her hip, a length of thread trailing behind her like a ribbon catching light. Theron follows, hands in his pockets, head tilted toward the canopy, listening.
"There's a rhythm here," he says softly. Cyrilla glances back. "I hear it too." And indeed you hear it, a beat between footsteps. Not music exactly, more like breath, like the forest is exhaling each time they step forward. Back at the divine loom, Clotho narrows her eyes. They're sinking with it, she murmurs, with what asks Atropos, whose usual irritation is now just curiosity. The deep pattern Lachesis answers quietly. The part of fate we don't write. There are legends even among the Moirai of a layer of fate deeper than thread, deeper than time. Not woven by gods, not even visible to them. A kind of gravitational pull in the fabric of being. The part of the pattern that pulses beneath will beneath desire. That which hums even in silence. Theron and Cyrilla have reached it. They pass under a broken archway of twisted branches, and the world shifts again, not dramatically, just slightly. The sound of their footsteps fades, their shadows lengthen. The trees stretch taller, the very air begins to remember things. A woman once wept here, a wolf once knelt, a child once laughed, with a mouth full of stolen fruit. The path beneath them is soaked with stories. Cyrilla kneels and touches the ground. It's all still here. Theron squats beside her. So what do we do with it? She shrugs. We don't fix it. We notice it. She picks up a small object half buried in moss, a cracked painted pebble, a face faintly etched into its surface. It isn't hers. It isn't his. But it belonged to someone. She places it on a tree stump like an offering. Not for worship, for witness. And as she does, the forest responds, just slightly. A breeze lifts a curtain of ivy. A crow calls once then falls silent. Somewhere deep in the trees, something sighs. Theron stands. We're caretakers now, he says. Cyrilla looks at him, not surprised. Were we ever anything else? They continue walking. The thread they carry begins to unravel behind them intentionally, not fraying, not unraveling out of neglect, releasing, giving itself back to the land, stitching a path that others can follow, not as prophecy but as permission. Clotho closes her eyes. They're teaching the pattern to be kind. Atropos nods slowly. Well, she mutters about time. Theron and Cyrilla come to a clearing where sunlight falls in lazy sheets. There's a pool at its center, small, shallow, perfectly still. Cyrilla walks to its edge. She peers in and gasps. It's not me, she whispers. Theron stands beside her. In the reflection, they don't see themselves. They see possibilities, versions of themselves that never were, some older, some younger, some bearing scars they never earned. Cyrilla's hand trembles. Is this... The futures we turned away from? Theron shakes his head. No, he says. It's the ones that turned away from us. There's no bitterness in his voice. Just understanding. The water flickers. Each reflected life gives a nod of thanks, of forgiveness, of peace, and vanishes. Cyrilla touches the surface once and it stills. Do you think they're watching? She asks quietly. The Moirai, no, she says. Everyone else? Theron looks up through the leaves. I think they feel us, he says, and that's enough. They turn from the pool, leaving behind not a monument, not a shrine, but a thread-looped stone at its edge, a quiet marker, for anyone who might need it. And the braid behind them continues, not leading, not following, just moving. Because this is what threads do when trusted. They carry. The forest thins. Not abruptly, not with a sudden clearing, but gradually, like a dream you realize is ending only once the light begins to change. The trees grow smaller, the path flattens, and the air becomes sweeter, filled with the scent of ripe berries and warm earth. Theron and Cyrilla say nothing. They don't need to, because when you walk long enough in rhythm with the world, even silence speaks fluently. Behind them, the braided thread is fading from sight, but not from memory. It sinks into the ground like rain into soil, leaving behind only the quiet feeling that something kind passed this way. At the loom, Clotho has stopped spinning. She's just watching now. Lachesis has laid her rod across her lap, and Atropos sits with her shears folded shut, her gaze soft and strange. They've become what we never could, Clotho says. Lachesis nods. What we were never meant to. Mortals, Atropos adds, who chose to keep weaving. Down below, Theron and Cyrilla reach a wooden fence, simple, weathered. The kind that asks, would you like to stop here, but doesn't insist. They climb it easily. Beyond lies a field. Golden, wide, alive with the hum of bees and the sound of wind brushing tall grass into whispers. At the center of the field, a figure waits. You know who it is. You don't need names. It's someone who's been waiting not just for them, but for you too. She is old, but not frail. Her face holds both youth and time. Her robe is threadbare, but glows faintly, with threads stitched in dozens of colors, some of which you've seen before, some of which you are. Theron approaches her. You, the woman smiles. Me? You were the thread, weren't you? She laughs. I was one of them. Cyrilla steps forward. What is this place? The woman doesn't answer. She opens her arms, and from the tall grass around her, figures emerge. Not gods, not ghosts, just people, some with spindles, some with braids, some with nothing at all but quiet eyes and palms turned open. Each carries a single thread, all different colors, all unfinished. Cyrilla steps back instinctively, but the woman gently touches her shoulder. They're not here to be judged, she says. They're here to choose. Theron looks around. Choose what to carry their thread, she replies, or to set it down with grace. The figures begin to move, slowly approaching the center of the field, where a small loom sits, wooden, quiet, waiting. Some step forward and gently weave their thread through. Others place their threads on the ground, whisper something you'll never hear, and walk away lighter. Each act is sacred. Each one adds or softens the pattern. Cyrilla breathes in deeply. They're not lost. No, the woman agrees, just free. Back at the divine loom, Clotho whispers, We've never seen this. Lachesis wipes her eyes. It's not fate, it's forgiveness, Atropos finishes. And perhaps for the first time all three sisters understand something they were never meant to know. Theron and Cyrilla step forward. They take the thread they've carried for so long, gold and green amber and grey, and lay it gently into the small loom. The shuttle glides once, then stops. They smile, because their part is done, but not over, not gone, just woven. The woman in the field touches the loom once, then looks at the sky. Time to go, she says. Theron and Cyrilla don't ask where, they simply walk, hand in hand, into the tall grass, and as they vanish beyond the golden horizon, the wind carries a single note, a faint, wordless song spun not from thread or breath, but from lives remembered. A melody you know, because some part of you wove it too. Dusk arrives like a velvet curtain, soft and slow, drawing itself across the field, where the loom now rests alone, bathed in golden twilight. The wind grows quieter, the bees vanish, and the tall grass stills. But the threads remain. Dozens of them, some woven, some waiting, catch the last light like veins of fire trapped in silk. They don't shimmer for attention. They simply glow with truth. You watch as the final figures leave the field, some turning back for one last glance, others walking onward without pause. No fanfare, no farewell, just the quiet dignity of choice completed. Above, Clotho spins again, but this time her hands follow your rhythm, yes, yours. Because with each step, Theron and Cyrilla took the tapestry shifted, not in rebellion, not in rupture, but in resonance. Their journey didn't replace the weave, it retuned it. And you've been humming along the whole time. Lachesis picks up her rod once more, but now it bends. Flexes, not rigid, adaptive. Even Atropos, keeper of endings, traces her fingers down the curve of her shears. She doesn't cut, she listens, because what began as one defiant thread burning gold and trembling with memory has become a language, a way for fate to speak with mortals, not at them. And it's growing. You feel it every time someone decides to forgive themselves in the quiet. When a letter is finally sent after years of waiting. When a step is taken towards something fragile and unfinished, and it is taken anyway. These are new kinds of threads, born from agency, not decree. Theron and Cyrilla walk through the last light of the horizon. We don't see them now, not clearly, but their braid continues woven into the pattern, yes, but also into every small decision, made with softness instead of fear. The loom in the field remains. It is not worshipped. No temple is built around it. No myths are written in its honor. But someone stumbles upon it every now and then. A child chasing a rabbit, a widow on an aimless walk, a poet who lost their words. They find the loom. And sometimes they leave something behind, a thread, a whisper, a gesture. Other times they simply sit, and for a moment they feel seen. The gods don't speak during these moments, because they know better. Instead they spin quietly, watching the threads grow in directions no one, not even Olympus, predicted. And in one particular corner of the loom there lies a thread, green and gold, wound with memory and forgiveness, braided with yours, still warm, still glowing, still becoming. Night has come. Not the heavy kind that swallows, no. This is a softer dark, the sort that invites you to rest, to wonder, to let go. It's a sky stitched with stars, and each one seems like a pin holding 1,000 invisible threads in place. The field, once golden with sunset, now glows silver in moonlight. The loom at its center gleams faintly. No one sits at it. No one spins or measures or cuts. And yet the tapestry grows slowly, gently, as if it's remembering how to breathe on its own. A breeze curls across the grass. It doesn't disturb the threads. It asks their permission, and the threads allow. Far above, Clotho looks down with a softness in her face you've never seen. Lachesis, ever the analyst, has set her measuring rod down entirely. She's drawing small spirals in the clouds with her fingertip. And Atropos. She's humming quietly. It's not a song of endings. It's not a dirge. It's familiar. You heard it once when Cyrilla sang in the archive. You heard it again when Theron touched the broken stone altar. And now it's yours. Below, in the silver-lit grass, something stirs. A thread you hadn't noticed before uncoils itself, lifting gently into the night. It dances on the wind like a ribbon set free. It's not attached to anyone now, not bound by purpose, not waiting for a decision. It is a thread that was once held by someone who carried too much, and finally let it go. It joins the tapestry without being pulled, and the pattern welcomes it. You realize, watching it drift, that this is how some lives find peace, not through grand acts or perfect closure, but through quiet acceptance, through becoming part of something greater without asking for recognition. And yet this thread is seen, fully, honored. A few moments later, more threads rise. You don't know their stories, but you feel them. One tastes like lilac and dried paper. Another crackles faintly like the embers of a letter that was never sent. A third smells like old wood and clean sheets. They are not tragic. They are whole. Theron and Cyrilla are gone now, not in the way people disappear, in the way footsteps soften when they no longer need to lead. You sense them out there still, helping someone choose to speak, helping someone rest, helping someone tie the knot in their own story without fear. Their braid lives on, not as rope, not as shackle, but as offering. Back in the field, the moonlight pools at the loom's base. You see something strange there, a reflection, not of the sky, of yourself. You look closer, and your thread is there too, tied gently into the edge. No announcement, no prophecy, just belonging. You didn't need to be chosen, you chose yourself, and the tapestry accepted you exactly as you are. No edits, no tests. Only the quiet truth you are always enough to be woven in. And now the pattern sleeps, not idly, restfully. The sky lightens, but not with sunrise. It's that rare hour between night and morning when time itself stretches. When owls return to their nests and the first bird dares a single tentative note, when the world is no longer dreaming but not yet awake. And in the center of that hush, the loom still sits. No longer a monument, just a part of the land, threaded into the grass, framed by wildflowers, bathed in a soft glow that doesn't come from sun or moon, but from the presence of something finished well. You sit there now. Yes, you. This whole time you've followed Theron and Cyrilla, you may have thought you were a bystander. But you weren't. You've walked beside them, thread brushing thread. You've felt the tangle tighten, the knot resist, and the slow aching unraveling into clarity. You've felt the choice not to cut, not to run, not to forget.
And now you feel something else rest. Not the kind that collapses, the kind that arrives. You reach toward the loom, not to weave, not to repair, but to remember the stories that made you, the ones you've let go, the ones still unwritten humming just below your skin. Your fingers touch the threads and they warm to meet you. They do not ask for anything. They do not judge what you bring. They only hold it. And for the first time you believe you are not just living your life, you are weaving it. The breeze returns gentler now, like a lullaby from the ground itself. It gathers the scent of jasmine, cool stone, and something like ink. You close your eyes, and when you open them, you are no longer watching the story. You are part of it. One thread among millions, but uniquely yours. The final braid is not grand, it is tender. It contains laughter that wasn't lost after all. A name spoken aloud when it mattered.
A promise kept quietly in a grocery store aisle. A choice to carry on without certainty but with care. Above the tapestry breathes, the Moirai do not speak. They are listening now. To the story you will tell next. To the path you'll trace. To the thread you'll choose not to cut, because it still has something to become. Because you do. You stand. The loom behind you hums once. A thank you. A farewell. A beginning. And now we drift. The story has softened. The threads have stilled. The loom rests gently in the dark, woven not with urgency, but with the hush of something deeply understood. You are safe here. Whatever you carried into this story, whatever knot you held in your chest, whatever unfinished word, whatever unspoken memory, It has found its place. It does not need to be resolved tonight, only held gently, kindly. Let your breath slow now. Feel the weight of your body sink into stillness. Let the hum of the thread soften behind your eyes, behind your chest, behind your name. In the dark, the stars return. They've been waiting just like you, watching patiently from the corners of every woven life. And now they blink softly above your head, small, constant kind. Each one holds a story, a possibility, a promise not forgotten. You don't need to remember every step of Theron's journey or Cyrilla's spindle. What matters is the feeling, that quiet knowing deep inside your breath that your thread is still warm, still glowing, still enough. And tomorrow when you rise, the world will not ask for anything grand. It will simply ask you to continue, to walk softly, to carry your thread, to keep becoming. So now, my friend, rest. Close your eyes. Let the loom spin without you for a while, and let your thread be carried, not pulled, because you are part of the pattern. You always have been, and you are loved here. End of script. Sweet dreams.